Hey, how are you doing? In today's video, I want to talk to you about what God told me about rest when I couldn't slow down. You know, there's this moment, 3 in the morning. You're wide awake. Your mind won't stop. Your body's exhausted, but your brain is running a marathon. You've got tomorrow's meeting playing in your head, next week's bills, your kid's college fund, the conversation you had at work that maybe didn't go right, the text message you sent that you're now replaying over and over, and underneath all of that, there's this constant hum, this background noise that never stops. It's the sound of a man who forgot how to rest. You try to sleep. You really do. You close your eyes. You count backwards from 100. You do those breathing exercises your wife read about online. But nothing works. Because rest isn't something you do at night. Rest is something you learn how to do while you're awake. And if you haven't learned that, if you spend your whole day running, pushing, producing, conquering, climbing, then nighttime doesn't fix anything. It just gives you 8 hours to sit with the fact that you're running from something. Maybe yourself, maybe God, maybe the reality that you can't actually control everything. And so you wake up again, another day, another mountain to climb, another list that never gets shorter, and you tell yourself it's temporary. You tell yourself once this project finishes, once this season ends, once I get ahead financially, then I'll rest, then I'll slow down, then I'll actually live. But that day never comes, because there's always another mountain, there's always another deadline, there's always another reason to keep going, keep pushing, keep grinding. If you're exhausted right now, if you're running on fumes and you don't even remember what it feels like to be still, hit that subscribe button. Because what I'm about to show you isn't another productivity hack. It's about something deeper, something that God's been trying to tell men like us for thousands of years. Because here's what I've learned in 30 years of counseling people. Burnout isn't about time management, it's about the soul. And when the soul is exhausted, no amount of sleep fixes it. But to understand how this all started, I need to take you back to where you learned to run. And on that day, everything seemed perfectly normal. You were young. Maybe you were 10 years old. Your dad came home from work. He looked tired. Really tired. But he didn't sit down. He didn't rest. He had things to do. The yard needed mowing. The car needed fixing. There were errands to run. He moved through the house like a man with a list, not like a man living a life. And you watched him. You learned something that day without anyone saying a word. You learned that being a man means always moving, always producing, always proving your worth through what you accomplish. Maybe your mom was different. Maybe she was stretched thin, working full-time, taking care of the house, taking care of you and your siblings. And she never sat down either. She never stopped. She modeled for you the idea that rest is selfish, that stopping means failing, that the moment you slow down, everything falls apart. So you didn't learn to rest, you learned to run. And for a while, running worked. It got you good grades. It got you into a good school. It got you promotions. It got you a wife who admired your drive. It got you the life you were supposed to want. But it never got you peace. Not once. Not for a single day. And then the moment came. Not when you were young, but somewhere in the middle of your life. You're at your desk. You're trying to focus on something important, and your chest feels tight. Your heart's racing. You think maybe it's a heart attack. Maybe this is it. Maybe your body's finally given up on you. You go to the doctor. They run tests. Everything's fine, they say. You're in perfect physical health. But there's something wrong with you. There's definitely something wrong. Because you can't breathe right. You can't focus. You can't turn your brain off. Or maybe it's different. Maybe you're at home. Your wife's talking to you about something important. Your kids are in the room. They want your attention. They want to play with you. And you can't do it. You physically cannot be present. Your body's there, but your mind is still at work, still solving problems, still planning, still running. And your wife gives you that look. The look that says, "I don't recognize the man I married." And your kids stop trying. They learn that dad's not actually available. Dad's somewhere else. Or maybe it's the quiet moment that breaks you. Sunday morning. No meetings, no deadlines, nowhere to be. And instead of feeling relieved, you feel empty. Because without the running, without the pushing, without the accomplishing, you don't know who you are anymore. You've become the job. You've become the hustle. And when you take that away, there's nothing underneath. Just a hollow space. Just a man who forgot how to be human. If you've ever woken up and realized you can't remember the last time you actually rested, if you've ever felt that panic of not knowing who you are without your productivity, leave a comment right now. Tell me one thing you've been putting off. One thing you'd actually like to do if you had the time. Because I read every single comment, and I want you to know that you're not broken. You're just tired. And tired can be fixed. Now, let me tell you about a man in the Bible who ran himself straight into the ground. His name was Elijah. And when I say he ran, I mean he ran. This man was a prophet. He had direct encounters with God. He spoke truth to kings. He called fire down from heaven. He was powerful. He was bold. He was exactly the kind of man our culture tells us to be. But here's what most people don't understand about Elijah. The real story. The one that matters. After Elijah defeated the prophets of Baal, and I mean he absolutely defeated them, called fire from heaven, proved that God was real, he should have been at peace. He'd won. Decisively. He'd shown his people what was true. The whole nation had seen it. But instead of resting in that victory, instead of taking a moment to acknowledge what God had done, Elijah ran. He ran for his life. He ran because a queen named Jezebel was angry with him. And instead of trusting that God would protect him, instead of resting in what God had just proved he could do, Elijah packed up and started running. He ran into the desert, completely alone. No food, no water, no plan. Just running. And after a while, the running caught up with him. His body shut down. He collapsed under a tree and asked God to take his life. Let me read that to you. He said, "It is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers." This man who had just been filled with the power of God. This man who had just called fire from heaven. This same man was now lying under a tree saying he wanted to leave this world. And do you know what the problem was? The problem wasn't his circumstances. The problem was that he had emptied himself completely. He had given everything to the work. He had run so hard and so fast and with such intensity that he'd forgotten to fill himself back up. He'd forgotten that even prophets need to eat. Even men filled with God's power need to sleep. Even the strongest people need rest. So God did something interesting. He didn't tell Elijah to run harder. He didn't say, "Come on, man up, get back to work." God didn't even give him a new mission right away. Instead, God told him to rest. God told him to eat, to drink water, to lie down and sleep. Not once, but 3 times. God basically said, "Elijah, your body needs food. Your mind needs sleep. Your spirit needs stillness. And until you give yourself those things, you can't hear what I'm trying to tell you." And after Elijah rested, after he ate, after he slept, something shifted inside him. He was able to hear God's voice in a way he hadn't before. God spoke to him not in the fire or the earthquake or the wind. God spoke to him in the still, small voice. the whisper, the gentle presence. And Elijah could only hear that because he had finally stopped running long enough to listen. Do you see what happened there? The running man couldn't hear God. The exhausted man couldn't receive what God was trying to give him. The man who emptied himself completely had nothing left to receive with. And God, in his infinite wisdom, didn't ask Elijah to do more. He asked him to do less, to rest, to be still, to receive. Now, here's what I want you to understand based on 30 years of counseling people and living this out myself. Because I've been that man. I've been Elijah under the tree. I've had panic attacks in my office. I've woken up at 3 in the morning, unable to turn my brain off. I felt that emptiness where my identity used to be. I know what that feels like. Starting today, I want you to do something that's going to feel impossible at first. I want you to practice rest while you're awake, not after you've accomplished everything, not after you've crossed off your list. While you're awake and there's still work to do. Here's what that looks like. Every single day, you're going to pick a time. Doesn't have to be long. 15 minutes is enough. And during those 15 minutes, you're going to do absolutely nothing that produces anything. You're not going to check your email. You're not going to make calls. You're not going to plan tomorrow. You're just going to sit. Maybe you sit with your wife. Maybe you sit with your kids. Maybe you sit alone and listen to music or read something that feeds your soul instead of your productivity. But for those 15 minutes, you're going to practice the skill of being instead of doing. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, John, I don't have 15 minutes. My schedule doesn't allow for that. But here's the truth. If you don't have 15 minutes to rest, you don't have a schedule problem. You have a soul problem. And your soul will eventually demand those 15 minutes, whether you give them willingly or whether your body forces you to take them as a breakdown. The second thing I want you to do is this. You need to tell someone you trust that you're struggling, not to fix it, not to give you advice, but just to speak it out loud. Say, I'm exhausted. I don't know how to slow down. I've forgotten what rest feels like. Because the moment you say that out loud, something shifts. You're no longer hiding, and you're no longer alone in it. And the third thing, the most important thing, is this. You need to ask God what He's trying to tell you through your exhaustion. Because exhaustion is often God's way of getting our attention. It's His way of saying, you're running towards something you don't actually need. You're trying to prove something that doesn't need proving. You're striving for a version of success that's destroying you. And until you hear what God's trying to say, you'll just keep running. My wife and I have been married 40 years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, the best years of our marriage have not been the years I was most productive. They've been the years I learned how to be present, the years I sat with her without checking my phone, the years I played with my grandkids without thinking about work, the years I allowed myself to be just a human being, not a human doing. And every single time I've slowed down, every single time I've chosen rest even though there was work waiting for me, I've discovered something. The work was still there. It didn't disappear. It wasn't somehow less important. But I had the energy to do it well. I had the presence to do it right. I had the wisdom to know what mattered and what didn't. So here's what I want you to remember. You started this video exhausted. You're probably sitting there right now, and your mind's already jumping to your to-do list, already calculating how you're going to fit this rest thing into your schedule, already trying to optimize it and make it productive. And I'm here to tell you, that's not rest. That's just another form of running. Real rest requires permission. Permission to stop. Permission to be inefficient. Permission to take time that doesn't produce anything. Permission to be a man who sometimes sits and does nothing, and that's enough. Elijah got that permission from God, and after he rested, after he slowed down, he became one of the greatest prophets in history. Not because he worked harder, but because he learned how to receive. He learned how to listen. He learned that the most important work happens in the stillness. You can learn that too, starting today, starting right now. Pick those 15 minutes. Find one person to tell. Ask God what He's trying to say, and then give yourself permission to rest. Not someday, not after this project, not when you finally made enough money or proven enough or accomplished enough. Now, today, this week. Because here's the truth that took me 30 years to understand. God doesn't need your productivity. He needs your presence. He doesn't want you to prove anything. He wants you to be still. He wants you to receive. He wants you to remember that you are not what you do. You are who you are. A human being, beloved, valued, worth rest. So hit that like button. It helps me reach men who are running themselves into the ground. Subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep talking about the spiritual foundation that actually holds our lives together. And leave a comment. Tell me, what's one thing you'd do if you actually had time? What would rest look like for you? Because your answer matters. And so do you. I'll see you in the next one.